Kshatriya qualities and were even obedient to the Brahminical culture, but who did not accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is making this distinction between Vedic activities and accepting Krishna as the Lord and doing everything for the pleasure of Krishna. And this is why Shri Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita to beware of the flowery words of the Vedas. So we have so I might think, well, we will find out later that what was Jarasandha doing? What kinds of fruitive activities? Well, he was actually doing like human sacrifices. So I might think, well, I'm not doing human sacrifices, so I'm okay. But actually, the key is that, as Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, that any self-centered activity is fruitive activity. And so therefore, there are many kinds of self-centered activities that are more subtle. And so here I'll speak about some more writings of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. This is on Srila Raghunath Das Goswami's book, Sri Manashiksha, Splendid Instructions to the Mind, verse 6. And I had hoped that I would be able to read what it says, but basically there's this, so devotees who have defeated the 6 enemies headed by lust may still be attacked by or the donkey urine of hypocrisy and deceit. So these are, so this is the donkey urinating. So this results in subtle self-centered activities even after one has overcome lust, anger, greed, envy, illusion, and intoxication or madness. After one has defeated those, one may still be overcome by hypocrisy and deceit, and then that can lead to subtle self-centered activities. So he gives, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives in his Bhajan Darpan commentary on this verse, some different types of these subtle self-centered activities. So he gives 2 types of householder practitioners, the Swanishta and the Parinishta. And for the sake of time, I won't go into what those are, but basically those are all the kinds that there could be. So in the deceitful nature of the Parinishta, sadhaka can be exhibited in 2 ways. One is making an external show of strictly following rules and prohibitions while inwardly being very attached to material subjects unrelated to Krishna. So this is where I'm saying that I'm definitely speaking for myself, that I'm trying to remember these things and purify myself so that I can be purified of these activities. And then the second one is preferring the association of non-devotees rather than Krishna-conscious devotees. So those are the 2 types of self-centered activities of the Parinishta sadhaka, and those are illustrated here. That a Parinishta devotee may exhibit hypocrisy by pretending to be strict, but privately being attached to mundane things, or by, so that's on the left, or by preferring the company of non-devotees. So that's on the right. And this is all part of the donkey urine bath of hypocrisy and deceit. So then there's the next type of householder is the Svanishta sadhaka. So the deceitful nature of the Svanishta sadhaka can be exhibited in 6 ways. One is indulging in sense gratification on the pretext of satisfying the Supreme God. 2 is serving rich, influential materialists instead of serving simple Nirapeksha servants of Krishna. 3 is accumulating more wealth than would ever be needed. 4 is enthusiasm for meaningless temporary gains, even at the cost of envying and harming others. And this can be quite subtle because this is actually the whole system of the world is set up this way. So it's actually very easy to get into this without even being aware of it, because the whole system is to be short-sighted and to have temporary gains and to try to dismiss the ways that those can be harmful to others. Number 5 is teaching twisted logic and self-motivated speculation in the name of giving education. And this might be shading into the gyan, the mixture of knowledge, speculative knowledge with, which is another of the obstacles besides the fruitive activities. And number 6 is wearing the dress of a materially disinterested renunciate in order to gain material prestige. So these last two are probably things that most of us are not, they're not relevant to us, but these first 4, I think, especially the 4th one, they're easy to get into. And so these are illustrated here. A Swanishta devotee may exhibit hypocrisy by engaging in sense enjoyment instead of pleasing the Lord, or serving materialists and desiring to accumulate wealth and opulence, or engaging in twisted logic instead of spiritual knowledge. So these are illustrations of this donkey you're in back. All right, so we will pray that that we will not do any of these things, and to that end, let us now listen to the tale of Jarasandha. So Srila Prabhupada has given a very nice summary of most of the tale of Jarasandha in his purport to Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 15, Text 9. So Arjun had come to Yudhishthir and had reported that Shri Krishna had just disappeared. So Arjun was very grief-stricken. And then he was remembering the activities of Krishna. And one of the activities of Krishna was, in which the Pandavas were very closely connected, was the killing of Jarasandha. So he had just mentioned that in this verse, and therefore then in the purport, Srila Prabhupada tells the story of Jarasandha. So Jarasandha was a very powerful king of Magadha, and the history of his birth and activities is also very interesting. His father, King Brihadratha, was also a very prosperous and powerful king of Magadha, but he had no son, although he married 2 daughters of the king of Kashi. Being disappointed in not getting a son from either of the 2 queens, the king, along with his wives, left home to live in the forest for austerities. But in the forest, he was benedicted by one great Rishi to have a son, and he gave him, so the Rishi gave the king 1 mango to be eaten by the queens in order to get the son. So the king, he actually gave the 2 halves of the mango to his 2 queens. So then the queens did so and were very soon pregnant. The king was very happy to see the queens bearing children, but when the right time approached, the queens delivered 1 child in 2 parts, 1 from each of the queen's wombs. In fact, this Jarasandha was born as one of the parts and parcels of the demon Viprachitti. The saint by whose benedictions the queens bore the child was called Chandra Kaushika, who foretold of the child before his father Brihadratha. So Brihadratha was the father, and Jarasandha, well, he was not yet Jarasandha. There's 2 half babies. So this is the illustration from the immortal Amar Chitra Katha. But when the queens delivered, they had only half a baby each. And so, because if I recall correctly, these queens are twins, but so that instead of one of the queens getting the fruit, they each got half of the fruit, and then they each had half of the baby. And I guess these are the midwives who are looking in consternation at these half babies. So continuing the purport, the 2 parts were thrown in the forest where a great she-demon used to live, and she was glad to have some delicate flesh and blood from the newly born child. Out of curiosity, she joined the 2 parts, and the child became complete and regained life. The she-demon was known as Jara, and being compassionate on the childless king, she went to the king and presented him with a nice child. The king was very pleased with the she-demon and wanted to reward her according to her desire. The she-demon expressed her desire that the child be named after her, and thus the child was surnamed Jarasandha, or one who was joined by Jara, the she-demon. So these 2 halves were reunited. And so this is 1 child now with 2 mothers. Very interesting. So since Jarasandha, so continuing the purport, since Jarasandha possessed demoniac qualities from birth, naturally he became a great devotee of Lord Shiva, the lord of all ghostly and demoniac men. Ravana was a great devotee of Shiva, and so also Jarasandha. He used to sacrifice all arrested kings before Lord Mahabhairava, Shiva, and by his military power he defeated many small kings and arrested them to butcher before Mahabhairava. So in other words, he didn't just kill them in battle. He would keep them, imprison them, and then instead of treating them as prisoners of war, he would then sacrifice them in front of this Mahabhairava. There are many devotees of Lord Mahabhairava or Kala Bhairava in the province of Bihar, formerly called Magadha. Now you're hearing this and you may think, well, this is very strange. So you may have heard that Vaishnavanam Yatashambhu, that Lord Shiva is the greatest Vaishnava. So how is it that human sacrifices are being performed to him? So people think that they can perform human sacrifices to Lord Mahabhairava or to Lord Shiva. And because Lord Shiva is the guna avatar of the mode of ignorance, they remain in ignorance and think that what they're doing is the right thing. But of course, Lord Shiva is a Vaishnava, and Parvati is also a Vaishnava, and people do human sacrifices to her also. But one of her names is Narayani, and she's also called Vaishnavi. So she also is not in favor of human sacrifices. And you all may know the story, which is, in the interest of time, I won't get into, of Jarabharat, who was offered for sacrifice to Kali, and then, to Kali, and then instead of him being sacrificed, the people who were trying to kill him were annihilated. So ultimately, this human sacrifice is not pleasing to Lord Shiva or to Kali either, but people are deluded in this way. So now coming to how does Jarasandha interact with Krishna? So now this is narrated in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 50. Shukadeva Goswami said, when Kamsa was killed, O heroic descendant of Bharata, his two queens, Asti and Prapti, went to their father's house in great distress. The sorrowful queens told their father, King Jarasandha of Magadha, all about how they had become widows. Hearing this odious news, O king, Jarasandha was filled with sorrow and anger, and he began the greatest possible endeavor to rid the earth of the Yadavas. With a force of 23 Akshohini divisions, he laid siege to the Yadu capital, Mathurā, on all sides. So here he is laying siege. So Sri Krishna was in Mathurā. He was still in Mathurā. He had killed Kamsa, and he had been reunited with Devaki and Vasudeva and all the Yadavas, and he saw that the armies of Jarasandha were laying siege to Mathurā, and each Akshohini is tens of thousands of warriors, and then there's chariots and horses and all kinds of military things. So ultimately, these 23 Akshohinis, headed by Jarasandha, they appear to be like an ocean. So the people of Mathurā were very afraid. So Sri Krishna and Balaram, they set out to fight with Jarasandha, and the celestial chariots came and their celestial weapons came and they fought. But meanwhile, Sri Krishna also spirited all the people out of Mathurā so that they would be safe from Jarasandha. So he defeated the entire 23 Akshohini army of Jarasandha, but at that time he didn't kill Jarasandha because he thought that I have descended to the earth for the purpose of ridding the earth of the burden of these wicked kings. And so these Akshohinis, this army that Jarasandha had assembled, it consisted of kings who had submitted to him and had accepted him as their feudal lord. So they were tributaries to him. They had accepted that, he's the big king and they're his vassals. So Sri Krishna thought, okay, so he has assembled all these kings into his army, and so this is very convenient for me because now I can just, get rid of all of them at once. So he let Jarasandha go after defeating his entire army. And so Jarasandha, at first, he went and his relatives said, oh, well, it was the destiny of karma, and so that's okay. But then he assembled more armies and then came back. So you can see how powerful was Jarasandha. So Kamsa, whom we hear about throughout the childhood pastimes of Krishna, he was Jarasandha's son-in-law, and Krishna defeated him very quickly. He just came to the wrestling arena. First he defeated the wrestlers, and then he defeated Kamsa. But in the case of Jarasandha, it actually takes it takes a very long time to defeat Jarasandha. And so Kamsa, as we heard, represents atheism. So that's not so hard, but Jarasandha represents fruitive activities, and it's very subtle and difficult to defeat. So Jarasandha was actually, he actually came and attacked Mathurā 17 times, and 17 times he was defeated. So Krishna killed all of these different armies. And then there was this, Jarasandha got this other warrior named Kala Yavana. So remember, we talked about the Yavana. So there's this warrior named Kala Yavana, and instead of killing this warrior himself, so remember, it's actually a great privilege to be killed by Krishna himself. So sometimes he doesn't actually, because whoever is killed by Krishna himself is at least gets impersonal liberation, and may get and in some cases, for instance, Putana even got to go to Goloka, so they may even get something better. So Krishna didn't kill this Kali Yavana. Instead, he ran away from Kali Yavana, and then Kali Yavana just followed him, and he lost sight of him. So Krishna ran into a cave and then ran into the depths of the cave. So then Kali Yavana comes to this cave, and then he sees that someone is lying there sleeping. So he thought, oh, this Krishna is so lazy that instead of fighting with me, he ran away, and then he decided to take a nap. So of course that was not what happened, but it was this King Muchukunda who was in the cave and who was taking a nap. But in fact, King Muchukunda had helped the Devas to fight in a battle, and then he was so tired at the end of the battle that when the Devas wanted to reward him, he said, well, I want to sleep, and if anyone wakes me up, then I want to kill them. That was his boon. So then this Kali Yavana came and woke up King Muchukunda, and then King Muchukunda, the first thing he saw was this Kali Yavana, so then he just burned him to ashes. So that was the end of Kali Yavana. So the 18th time, Krishna and Balaram, they, instead of defeating Jarasandha, they ran from Jarasandha. So this is why Krishna is called Ranchor, the one who ran from the battle. And then because they were tired of going here and there, they decided to run up a mountain. So this is how you can tell that this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When I am tired, I do not decide that I'm going to run up a mountain. And this is not just a small mountain. This mountain was 11 yojanas high. So they ran up the mountain, then they jumped off of the mountain. And because the mountain was so high, when they jumped off, they could fly through the air very far away. And they flew to where all the Yadavas were assembled, and to what became Dwarka. So then Krishna very quickly made this fort, the Dwarka fort, and the Yadavas were assembled there, so then he was all safe. So then he actually, from that fort, he engaged in many activities. Balaram got married, Krishna got married to Rukmini. So actually, at this time, Jarasandha was not bothering him anymore because he was in the fort. So Jarasandha even went to try to marry Rukmini, like Jarasandha was one of the kings who tried to marry Rukmini. So Jarasandha was, it seemed like Jarasandha was then just acting like a king, and, Krishna was acting like a king in Dwarka, and that this was all happening separately. And so one of the lessons that we may learn is that sometimes it seems like Krishna is taking a very long time to do something, or to do something about something. And we may think, why is Krishna not taking care of this situation? And so in some cases, so there is a purport in Srimad Bhagavatam where Sri Krishna said, where Srila Prabhupada explains that sometimes Krishna wants his devotees to be glorified. So if we're thinking that why is Krishna not taking care of the situation, it may be because he wants a particular devotee to take care of the situation. So then this is what happened. So while Krishna was in Dwarka, one day a messenger came. So there were some kings who, instead of submitting to Jarasandha as his vassal and giving tribute to him, they refused. So then Jarasandha was collecting all these kings because he wanted to collect a lot of kings so that he could make a sacrifice of 100,000 kings. And so he kept defeating kings, and if they wouldn't submit to him, then he would put them in prison. And so there were 20,000 kings who were all in prison waiting to be sacrificed by Jarasandha. So they sent a messenger to Dwarka, and then Sri Krishna received the message that they were asking him to rescue them. So then, but instead of going to kill him by himself, Sri Krishna took Bhima and Arjuna. And so this is actually part of the lesson, is that Sri Krishna not only wanted to get rid of the bad kings, but he wanted to install a good king, the good king Yudhishthira. And so it would actually be more glorious for Yudhishthira if his brothers defeated Jarasandha. So this is back the purport of Canto 1, Chapter 15, verse 9. Srila Prabhupada continues. Krishna, Bhima, and Arjuna together went to Jarasandha in the dress of poor brahmanas and begged charity from King Jarasandha. Jarasandha never refused charity to any brahmana, and he performed many sacrifices also, yet he was not on a par with devotional service. Lord Krishna, Bhima, and Arjuna asked Jarasandha for the facility of fighting him. So this is what they begged in charity, that to have a single combat. And it was settled that Jarasandha would fight with Bhima only. So all of them were both guests and combatants of Jarasandha, and Bhima and Jarasandha fought every day for several days. And it's also interesting, so this part of this piety of Jarasandha is that even though he was fighting with Bhima every day, in the evening he would then treat them, very nicely as guests, with all hospitality and conversation and food and everything. But all of these things are not sufficient because he was a self-centered, fruitive person. Anyway, so they fought every day for several days, and Bhima became disappointed, but Krishna gave him hints about Jarasandha's being joined together as an infant, and thus Bhima dissected him again and so killed him. All the kings who were detained in the concentration camp to be killed before Mahabhairav were thus released by Bhima. Feeling thus obliged to the Pandavas, they paid tribute to King Yudhishthira. And so here is Krishna giving the hint that because he was joined as a child, therefore he had this vulnerability that he could be split. So Krishna is showing him by splitting a piece of grass. And so then Bhima killed Jarasandha by splitting him in two and separating the halves so they could not be joined together. So Bhima saying ki jai, Shri Krishna ki jai. And so that is the death of Jarasandha. And with that, I will take any questions. Any brief questions from here or online? Let me see if I can stop sharing.
The question I had, Mata, was,
yes.
Are you going to share the slides?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I don't see anything in the chat.
Few people were asking if they can get the slides.
Okay.
I can email it out.
All right. Okay, well, it is, I think it is time for Arati.
Yeah.
So Mataji, one question.
Oh, yes.
Like, so Lord Krishna gave hint to Bhima, right, to do that. So
Yes.
by giving hint, was Lord Krishna trying to show that he's always helpful to devotees and he always
Yes.
was that the purpose?
Yes, thank you there for asking that question. That's a very good question. And in
Please
fact,
repeat the question.
oh, yes. So the question was that Lord Krishna gave the hint to Bhima that he could kill Jarasandha by splitting him in two. And she's asking, is the purpose of that to show that Krishna is always helpful to devotees? And yes, that is a very good point. So in fact, that is the point of this verse that I've been reading the purport to in Canto 1, Chapter 15, verse 9, where Arjuna is recounting the activities of Krishna. And one of them is he's telling Yudhishthira that, thanks to Krishna's help, your younger brother was able to kill Jarasandha. And then, of course, we think of the Pandavas as very powerful people, but as soon as Krishna had departed, then they lost their power. And that's one of the things that Arjuna was saying. So the power comes from Krishna, but then Krishna uses it to help his devotees, and sometimes he doesn't act directly. Is that okay?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other? Okay, thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Maharaj ki jai.
Yeah.
Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.